Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Here's something no one in the Trump family has ever thought or said. From very early on, I knew I wanted to work for the government and make the world a better place. Lisa Page said that in her very first public comments about her years of being attacked by the President of the United States. Former FBI lawyer Lisa Page broke her public silence with our next guest, Molly Jong-Fast. In that interview, Lisa Page said something that no one has ever said about any president of the United States until now. Honestly, his demeaning fake orgasm was really the straw that broke the camel's back. This is what Lisa Page was referring to.
Lisa Page. What a group. She's going to win. 10 million to 1. She's going to win. I'm telling you, Peter. I'm telling you, Peter, she's going to win. Peter, oh, I love you so much. I love you, Peter. I love you too, Lisa. Lisa, I love you. Lisa. Lisa. Oh, God, I love you, Lisa.
And that's the moment that changed everything for Lisa Page, according to Molly Jong-Fast's report in the Daily Beast. She said, I had stayed quiet for years, hoping it would fade away, but instead it got worse. It had been so hard not to defend myself, to let people who hate me control the narrative. I decided to take my power back. And joining us now is Molly Jong-Fast, whose article in the Daily Beast is entitled Lisa Page Speaks. Molly, thank you very much for joining us. It's an extraordinary piece. We've been wondering about this woman for years as the president attacks her on a daily basis. And here she is finally telling us not only how she's felt about it, but why she came out. That moment just in October, when the vulgarian-in-chief does something that we've never seen before.
Yeah, it was an amazing moment to sit with her 2 weeks later and to hear her tell me that that was the thing that made her decide she was going to, just take it back. And I felt very honored to get to be a part of that moment.
And just for the record, for the audience, her offense against Donald Trump is that she was, in 2016, during the presidential campaign, watching the most incompetent, least informed presidential candidate in history. She watched him with fear, like most of Americans, and like most Americans, she didn't want him to be president. And she privately communicated that with others, and texts of that private communication eventually became public, including private communication with her then, with a former lover of hers at the FBI. They had a right to that private communication. Yep. They had a right to the personal view that Donald Trump should not be president, would be a bad president. They were completely right about that.
Right.
And Donald Trump has attacked her and others as if they had no right to ever think that he would be a bad president.
Well, the only possible law that they could have broken would be the Hatch Act. And they didn't break the Hatch Act. But ironically, Kellyanne Conway breaks the Hatch Act
every day,
all the time.
Yep.
So they're always obsessed with, saying that people are doing the things that they're actually doing.
Yeah, and Hatch Act is publicly advocating for a client, which government workers can't do, which she did not do. And then the issue becomes, was her judgment in any of the elements involving the investigation of the Russian interference in our election, was any of her judgment colored by the fact that she didn't want Donald Trump to be president? And we have found absolutely no evidence of that.
She's been totally exonerated. I mean, it's such, and we know that this December 8th IG report is going to exonerate her further because we've seen that in the leaks. The question is really like, why were these text messages leaked? And how does the president use women to distract? You know, how does he get his base all ginned up with misogyny to distract from the things he's doing that are sort of nefarious? And we see it again and again and again. It
almost seems like he would have to invent a Lisa Page if he didn't have one.
Or a Christine Blasey Ford, or a, Maria Yovanovitch. It's just this continual women that he finds to use, to abuse.
And you see, and your reporting indicates that for Donald Trump, there's extra fuel in this when it's a woman he's attacking.
Yeah, and I think there's this weird sexual angle, like the lover, Lisa Page. But yeah, he gets much more involved in the narrative when it's a woman, and you see, I'm always shocked. And like we saw it with E. Jean Carroll, I wrote about her, and it was that same kind of thing where he just went after her, and he said, I mean, this is my favorite Trump thing he does. I mean no disrespect, right?
Yes.
And then he says, like, horrendously disrespectful.
Means nothing but disrespect.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't, it doesn't mean, that doesn't negate the disrespect.
Yeah, and what did you find? Who is this woman, Lisa Page, who you spent time with?
She's amazing. She's completely self-made. She's was one of the only women. She was the only woman in her DOJ honors course. Like, she's just a very extraordinary, smart woman. And Andy McCabe thought she was incredible. He really trusted her with everything. And she's a lawyer, and she's very lawyerly. And the stuff, she speaks she's just really a great person.
The Daily Beast has the piece. Molly Jong-Fast got the story. It is such an honor to have you here. I've been following your thinking and your writing and your tweeting for years and years and years. Great to have you here. Really appreciate it.
It is Wednesday, the 4th of December of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Oh, a separation of church and state is all that we asked for. In fact, we fought a revolution as part of the reason. That was part of the reason for our revolution. And yet, all of that is forgotten now. Everybody has to go through a religious test. And if you are a sinning libertine like Donald Trump, I don't know. I guess the religious test is, can you pander to us enough? And apparently he has, and he has that backing. Apparently Trump is exhibiting some extreme mental decline. I wouldn't say necessarily the old term would be retardation. I mean batshit crazy. Okay, I know that that's also a very offensive concept now, but just say okay boomer to me right now. I'll take it. All right. But I can't come up with another. Well, given enough time, I could come up with other terms to explain what the hell is going on. But it's no wonder right-wing evangelicals, who actually are targets of the grift. I don't mean the Joel Osteen types. Okay, those are the grifters. They know what the hell is going on. I'm talking about the true believers. This idea that Trump could be fallible is anathema. They cannot wrap their heads around it. It is a crazy position to take, and yet they found they're crazy. He speaks to them. He speaks to their level. He speaks to their fears. He speaks to their limited, stunted emotional understanding. Yes. it is true. I mean, normally people develop empathy for other beings, not just humans, just beings, at a very early age. And Trump does not have that development. It stops somewhere before the whole empathy concept was able to hardwire itself into his biocomputer. So now we're having a debate today about what is impeachment. They're not taking him out on 25th Amendment principles. Because in a court of law, I think that he would still be considered sentient enough to know what the hell is going on. He can deny what he is doing as being wrong all he wants, but in that denial, he knows that it's not true. But in his alternative universe, the Trump alternative universe, Adam Schiff is the crazy one. Adam Schiff is the lunatic. Adam Schiff had something that went on in his childhood that stunted him irreparably. You don't really need to be a trained psychologist or have sat on the couch of a psychiatrist to know that that is projection. So now it beggars the question. I wish someone would ask it. Don, what happened to you when you were a kid? Can you show me on the doll where they hurt you? That was never asked to Donnie. And now he's a full-grown human being, about ready to exit this plane of existence, because that's just the way time works. But since you can't take your toys with you, you might as well destroy the world on your way out if you're in a position to do it. Yep. Any white rich boy who is stunted emotionally can grow up to be the leader of the free world and destroy it. Yes. And now we have Tom Steyer and Mike Bloomberg running for president on the Democratic side. Kamala Harris is out, and you know Castro's on his way out too. Being a progressive, totally competent, a liberal, a stalwart to civic duty, that does not make money. Being a liberal doesn't make money. People don't throw money at that. But people aren't really throwing money at Steyer and Bloomberg either. That's why they got to bring their own. And that's the only reason they're up on that stage. Now, in a just world, clips of Pete making jokes, birther jokes at a Tea Party event. In a just world, Pete would have dropped out before Kamala. Now, of course, that's in a just world. So then it also beggars the question that quantum scientists, quantum mechanics, poses quite often about bubbles of existence in different planes, that everything is possible. I mean, instead of getting hit by a car in another plane of existence, you were able to step right outside, right by it like a matador with the bull rushing by. But in another plane of existence, you got smashed like a bug by that moving car at speed. So one plane of existence, you're dead. Another plane of existence, you continue living. But in quantum mechanics, maybe those two diametrically opposed possibilities exist in the same plane of existence. How else to explain the alternative universe that Trump and his sycophants live in? You can show these people I mean, it doesn't even have to be on tape. Take them to Fifth Avenue and watch him commit the crime, and they will see something entirely different. And that's what gaslighting is, because then you start questioning, well, am I in the real plane of existence? Is this the real truth that I live in? Maybe the truth exists over there. In where up is down and down is up. Well, according to my point of view, that's what gaslighting is. You know, I get it so bad that people actually gaslight experiences that I had. You know, I might have mentioned, and they'll just say, that never happened. You know, so do you really want to argue with that? It's sort of like showing off a little bit, isn't it? You know, I might have inadvertently humble bragged a name drop of a celebrity that I knew, you know, not intimately by any means, but, you know, I've been to a few soirees. I took part in a few actual intellectual type salons in Southern California back in the day, put on by some very well-known celebrities and their spouses, who may or may not have been well-known in their own right. I'm just saying. So, you know, you live in the Southland and you decide to become, decide. I had the great fortune of having a college professor father, and that realm of experience then was like the Venn diagram. You start meeting other people who know other people, and they introduce you, and next thing you know, you're trying to figure out how to organize a anti-war protest at MacArthur Park without getting your head bashed in, because they used to do that quite often back in the day. Yeah, okay, boomer. We didn't do anything. We just made the world more terrible. Anyway, when they say, just as an aside, when they say, okay, boomer, really it's the okay Rush rumor boomers. Those were the ones that we were fighting with back in the day, who kept basically undoing everything we did. You know, like the types who said that they wanted to shrink government down to the size where you could drown it in a bathtub. And we were trying to find a place where all of us could work together for the common good. And then you got this other side that just wants to drown it all in a bathtub. And they use that rhetoric and then call the ones who are the lovey-dovey types the violent hippies. They're going to come and kill us in our sleep like the black people want to. Those were the people that we were trying to fight. Okay? We wanted to make sure that we had clean air, clean water, no war, and the ones who fought in those wars were taken care of, because everyone that said, oh, we love our military, they don't care about the military, they don't care about the soldiers, it's just fodder, they're just cannon fodder, forget about them when they come back. Otherwise, how do you have all these veterans out on the streets homeless and then blame them for being homeless? Yeah, I'm going off today, aren't I? The point being is that this leader of the free world is being impeached. And he is wholly unqualified to even hold the position as the leader of the free world, because he was installed there by Vlad. And there is a lot of active measures going on. In fact, you know, it's so bad, you know, the dupes and the idiots, I think it's just great fun. Oh, yeah, we'll promulgate all of this agitprop as long as we get to kick the lib. Triggered, bro? Are you triggered, bro? They think it's all fun and games. Well, I suppose there were those back in the day who thought the Holocaust was just all fun and games. Oh, you're just a liberal. That's not really happening. And rest assured, if you read William Shirer, The Rise and the Fall of the Third Reich, there was tremendous denial about what was happening, even though it was happening right in front of their faces. Okay, boomer, what's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Well, you know, Trump's hatred gets outed every time he is in conflict with a professional woman. And Lisa Page has had enough, and good for her. Everybody should read Molly Jong's Fast article. It is quite revealing. Please do. Then on the rest of the menu, a GOP candidate for governor falsely claimed immigrants attacked tens of thousands of kids in his state because all you have to do is say it, and there's a lot of white nationalist racist bigots, yes, they are there, who just lap that stuff up and say, oh yeah, it has to be true. A GOP congressman is facing voter fraud and perjury allegations for listing a UPS store as his residence. Well, I don't know. If you got a lot of packages coming your way, maybe you just want to get closer to the store. Just live in it. Yeah, does he really live in it? No, a UPS store is not a residence, and you can't claim that as a residence when you're running for office. I guess he could just claim ignorance. Ignorance of the law. Remember when ignorance of the law was no excuse? Now it's the number one excuse. If you're white. And the House voted to block Trump's attack on military families living abroad. Why wait to attack them when they're here? Attack them when they're over there so you don't have to attack our military families when they're here. I mean, obviously, in Trump's alternative universe, that makes sense. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a surprise drop in coal use in the United States and Europe has helped to slow the growth of global carbon dioxide emissions this year. That's a good thing. Maybe we should continue doing that and continue having it drop. Please. And Russia has accused Washington of deliberately delaying the issuing of visas for Russian officials traveling to the U.S. All I can say is don't let Don know somebody's slow-walking all these visas from Russian mobsters. He might get mad. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link right there by the social media scroll, and we thank Kelly Lincoln for monitoring the chat room. And if you would then take a look at the leftish of the page at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page, and thank you to those, and especially those recently who have become now recurring Patreons of Netroots Radio. I cannot begin to tell you the generosity that you guys have extended has really helped us get our bills paid, and I'm going to have to get, as I've mentioned before, it's a broken record, I know, newish machinery. I'm amazed at these workhorses, how they're limping along, and I better knock on wood, even though I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Knocking on wood. But, yeah, I don't want to jinx it, and I don't even believe in that either. But thank you once again for your generosity. It has allowed us to fulfill our civic duty of resistance, and we would truly be unable to do it without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and we are forever indebted to Tom for that and all the other things that he does along with Kelly. Thank you both. I, of course, take care of @Justice Putnam, and that's a pretty good place to follow me because I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media for everybody's social media pleasure. Or is it something less? Is it something painful? Well, we hope that this is an oasis of, I don't know, intellectual resolve. How about that? With a bit of, crass fun. Okay, it's not even Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, and we're already having fun on Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Wow, that's rather frightening. Hey, go ahead and follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And most importantly, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Not just this show, but all the shows that we have on Netroots Radio that we produce here. Okay? Do it. All right, let's... I can't go on without mentioning that I'm rather upset that Kamala dropped down. I wish the DNC had figured out the rules, such as it was, the debate rules, that made it so easy for billionaires to go ahead and just get in, game it, you know. I don't want to completely drag on Steyer and Bloomberg, okay? But, no. No, please just no. I mean, Bloomberg could buy Fox News. People say that. That could be a great civic duty of his. Just buy Fox News. I don't think he can because Rupert is not going to sell it. Neither are the kids. You know, I mean, they're part of a global plan to pretty much take over the world, and they've been pretty good at it. You know, why would they want somebody who's, I don't know, an undernourished Batman? What makes you think that they're going to give into that and that will work? No, not in this world, whether it's alternative or not. So, yeah, I'm upset. And Julian Castro is, he's not even in the debate now. How is that possible? Tulsi will be there. And the Trump and the rest of his campaign thanked her for pretty much running Kamala out of the race. And they're gloating. In fact, they did make a proclamation about they were so sorry to see Kamala go. But you don't mess around with Kamala because she immediately had the perfect rejoinder, which was, "Do not worry, Mr. President. I'll see you at your trial," because she will be sitting there as a judge and maybe even an inquisitor. I doubt it because Mitch will, try to shut her up. But nevertheless, she persisted. Trying to get him out. Need more coffee, possibly. Well, boy. We're just burning up the time here, but that's okay. It's a salon. I mean, we're allowed a bit of freedom to conjecture, possibly. Yes, indeed. Well, let's look at this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it's out of the American Independent by Josh Israel. North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest, repug in parentheticals. I added the EPUG, just so you know. Recently attacked local law enforcement officials and the man whose job he hopes to take next year for allowing sanctuary cities in his state. Which reminds me, Bill Barr has made a proclamation that any town or any city or any suburb that protested the police are going to not have police anymore. We're just going to take all funding away from the police departments because you protested the police. John Mitchell, Bill Barr now. Back to the article. Dan Forest also painted undocumented immigrants as rapists and murderers before making the stunning claim that tens of thousands of kids in his state had been attacked by migrants. You know, the same ones that came in to vote. You know, tens of thousands, millions of Mexicans, and they were Mexicans according to Donnie. Went to Maine, for instance, and voted in Maine. Millions. There were not millions of votes in Maine, but in Don's alternative universe, there was. He believes it, and so do his followers. I guess we'll call them followers. So, tens of thousands of kids in this state have been beaten up by migrants. Maybe refugees. At a November 25th immigration roundtable, Forrest, who is running to challenge Democratic Governor Roy Cooper next year, complained that several communities in the state were not participating with the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, and that Cooper vetoed a bill to require local sheriffs to collaborate with ICE. You know, they're always for local control until they get into the federal government, then they want to become Lex Luthor. The comments were first flagged by the liberal opposition research group American Bridge 21st Century. During the roundtable, Forrest scolded reporters covering the event for not using dehumanizing language to describe undocumented immigrants. You know, you call them illegals and ram their head at the top of the police car. Don't put your hand on their head to lower them in. Ram that right in there. They're stupid illegals, rapists and murderers. Okay. Forrest said, please, as you're writing your stories for this evening's paper or this evening's news, and you want to tell your community what's going on in this situation, please think carefully about what words you use. Many of you are going to be struggling, trying to not use words like illegal and alien, and words like criminal and rapist and murderer and child sex offender. He then offered a shocking and unsourced claim that there were tens of thousands of children in our state that have been victims of these violent criminals, except he used some other term, I guess illegal or some other term, because they have in brackets undocumented. And then he summed up, who will grow up with that on their mind. They're going to remember those migrants coming in and beating them up. Really? Okay. Well, Forrest's office did not immediately respond to an inquiry asking the source of his claim because there's not any. Snopes recently debunked a similar false claim that 10,800 children were raped by undocumented immigrants in 2018 nationally, but North Carolina crime statistics show just about 2,000 reported rapes of all kinds in the state annually. Spokespeople for the North Carolina Conference of DAs, Department of Public Safety, and the State Bureau of Investigation said they had no data to confirm Forrest numbers, which in the Trump alternative universe is just proof that it's been happening. If they don't have any numbers, they must be hiding something, huh? Study after study has shown undocumented immigrants as a group commit fewer crimes than the rest of the population, but I got to tell you, if you talk to anybody here in the Rogue Valley of Southern Oregon who happens to be white and a Trump bro Colt 45 cultist, you tell them that, and they'll tell you that you are part of the deep state, and while they're open carrying their guns and fingering it while telling you that you better learn to be polite. Back in June, Forrest warned that the diversity and multiculturalism that America faces today could destroy the country. I'm wondering if he possibly clicked his heels and gave a stiff-arm salute. Offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays is brought to us by Matthew Chapman out of Raw Story. The Topeka Capital Journal on Tuesday, that was yesterday, reported that Representative Steve Watkins, Repug of Kansas, I added the E-Pug, just so you know, is facing allegations of voter fraud and election perjury for lying about his residence on his voter registration form. Oh, according to the Trump alternative universe, this is just a technicality. Watkins listed his address for voting purposes as 6021 Southwest 29th Street in Topeka, which is in fact a UPS store. His campaign contends that Watkins made the alteration by mistake, although state officials from both parties are calling for an investigation. Alteration? Oh, do tell me more. Unless I'm mistaken, no one can live at a UPS store. It cannot be a place of residence, said Republican State Representative Blake Carpenter, who sits on the House Elections Committee. Wow, when your friends hate you. This person undoubtedly voted in an election in November for candidates that he had no constitutional right to vote for. This is wrong and illegal. No one is above the law. Wow, that's coming from a Republican. Who knew? Election perjury is punishable under Kansas state law by fines of up to $100,000 and up to 7 months in prison. Not jail, prison. While federal election fraud charges could lead to fines of up to $10,000 and as many as 5 years in prison. Not jail, prison. Watkins, who narrowly won the open 2nd Congressional District in a closely watched election in 2018, has already faced calls from his own party to resign over another unspecified scandal. The mind reels what that could be in Topeka. Israel of the American Independent brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The House of Representatives on Tuesday, that would be yesterday, passed by a voice vote a bipartisan bill to undo the Trump administration's policy, declaring that children of government and military employees living abroad would not be considered to be residing in the United States for purposes of acquiring American citizenship. Because John McCain is dead, he can't say anything about it now, can he? The rule, which would place more hurdles in front of service members seeking to have families, was slammed by veterans as abominable and unpatriotic. Sure, it is. The vote was a strong repudiation of the recent rule change pushed by Trump's acting immigration czar, Ken Cuccinelli, who was shamed by O'Malley just the other day. Last week, in fact. Cuccinelli, acting head of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, is an anti-immigrant activist. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. He's a bigot. Please, Josh. And former Repug Attorney General of Virginia. I added the EPUG, just so you know. In August, his department announced a policy change to stop automatic citizenship for children of citizens who are serving the country abroad at the time of their births. In the past, children of U.S. citizens who were born abroad were simply considered citizens without having to go through a complicated application process and establish residency in the United States because they're on American soil when they're on an American military base. When you're in a diplomatic compound, you are on American soil. Donnie and Ken. Well, that brings us to our break. We better look at the time. Oh, my. And when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Legacy. When I first saw the trailer for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I was wondering whether it would add to an understanding of the kids' TV superstar, Mr. Rogers, following 2018's doc, Won't You Be My Neighbor? The answer to this is both not a lot and a great deal. I'll explain. First, the former, the new movie starring Tom Hanks, is only tangentially a biopic. Director Marie Heller, who gave us last year's Can You Ever Forgive Me, is more concerned with the effects of Fred Rogers' radically empathetic demeanor and examines it through a story about a cynical, narcissistic journalist named Lloyd Vogel. Lloyd's character is based on real-life reporter Tom Junot, and the film is a narrative of the interaction between interviewer and interviewee after an assignment to do a piece on Rogers from his editor at Esquire. Given Lloyd's nature, he's determined initially to uncover the real Mr. Rogers, but comes to understand that the TV icon is as advertised. As the movie continues, it's largely watching the action of a therapist or counselor. Rogers was an ordained Presbyterian minister, as Lloyd comes to terms with some serious daddy issues, and Daddy in the Flesh in a standout performance from the underrated Chris Cooper. Hanks gives an immersive performance as Fred Rogers, but almost in a supporting role, with Matthew Rhys garnering more time on screen as the troubled Vogel. Fans of the PBS show will appreciate the cardigans, puppet characters, and familiar sets, many of which look like the genuine articles, especially the cityscape models used in the interstitial scenes. To find out more about the man Fred Rogers, the aforementioned documentary might be more what you want, but to truly understand him, you need to spend a beautiful day, or at least a couple of hours of one, in the neighborhood. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on their page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. In addition to giant crustaceans and creepy anglerfish, the deep oceans hide a vital piece of technology, the cables connecting almost every continent, island, and archipelago to the internet. But it seems those undersea cables can be used for more than just sending cute cat memes around the world.
We can do a good job picking up earthquakes using offshore cables.
Jonathan Aho Franklin is an applied geophysicist at Rice University and Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. He says that fiber optic cables are like threads of glass, and there are impurities built in. So when you shoot lasers through the fibers, those impurities backscatter some of the light right back to the laser source.
And we make measurements of the change in the backscatter light over time, which gives you information on the stretch of the cable at each location.
His team took advantage of a brief maintenance period when a particular cable off the coast of Monterey, California, was not being used for communication. The researchers studied the slight deformations in the cable and were able to sense a small earthquake, pinpoint unmapped faults in the seafloor, and observe movements in the water column, all of which might be of interest to oceanographers. Their work is in the journal Science. Aho Franklin points out that seismometers are pretty sparse in the world's oceans.
It's a big blank spot.
So these cables could really come in handy. And unlike for this study, you wouldn't even have to turn off the internet to do it.
We're looking at ways of potentially using just a small section of the spectrum so that you can communicate at the same time you can do sensing on these kinds of cables.
Which might bring more of Earth's deep rumblings online. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Would you go to jail for justice for working people? Over the years, many in the labor movement have had to make that decision, and such was the case for Cesar Chavez. And on this day in labor history, the year was 1970. Chavez, the head of the United Farm Workers Union, was jailed for 20 days for refusing to end a lettuce boycott. Specifically, he was charged for continuing a boycott of lettuce grower Bud Antle and Dow Chemical, which owned 17,000 acres of the Antil land. The United Farm Workers had earned national prominence with their successful grape boycott. They decided to expand their efforts to address the abysmal conditions faced by lettuce workers in the Salinas Valley of California. One of the key issues for the United Farm Workers was the dangerous pesticides that workers encountered while picking lettuce. A total of 31 different lettuce growers were targeted with strikes and boycotts. In what came to be known as the Salad Bowl strikes, as many as 10,000 United Farm Workers protested the Salinas Valley growers. The United Farm Workers lettuce organizing was hampered by competing efforts by the Teamsters Union. In addition, the United Farm Workers faced a legal backlash for their attempts to bring fair contracts to the lettuce fields. A California district court enjoined both Chavez and the United Farm Workers from picketing the lettuce growers. Chavez ignored the injunction. From his prison cell, Chavez declared, "I am prepared to pay the price for civil disobedience. I was spiritually prepared for this confinement." Coretta Scott King, wife of Dr. Martin Luther King, and Ethel Kennedy, wife of Robert Kennedy, visited Chavez while he was in jail. The fight for justice in the fields was long and hard. In 1975, California passed the Agricultural Labor Relations Act, a landmark step towards justice for farm workers. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Phase 2 of the impeachment inquiry begins Wednesday morning at 10 Eastern when the House Judiciary Committee convenes its first hearing following the release of the Intelligence Committee's report. Although it will be academic, featuring law professors testifying about the roots of impeachment and its historical context, the Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, led by Ranking Member Doug Collins of Georgia, have vowed to use procedural tactics and more to slow down the proceedings. Jerry Nadler, the chair of the committee, privately addressed Democrats Tuesday morning, where he reportedly proclaimed, quote, "I'm not going to take any shit." Now, about that 300-page report released Tuesday by Adam Schiff's Intelligence Committee. In addition to laying out its case that Trump abused his power and obstructed justice in his Ukraine dealings, the report calls the evidence overwhelming and also includes some new information, like phone records that detail at least half a dozen calls between Rudy Giuliani and the White House Office of Management and Budget. Meanwhile, the president is still in London for the NATO summit, where he continues making an ass of himself on the world stage. Washington Post reporting, quote, "On the first day of the NATO 70th anniversary summit in London, Trump pronounced, prodded, and pushed America's allies into a state of unbalance, seizing the global stage to both bully and banter, all while keeping himself at the center of attention. Over the course of 3 one-on-one meetings with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, Emmanuel Macron, and Justin Trudeau, Trump turned what were expected to be brief photo opportunities into his own personal daytime cable show. As the other leaders largely bore witness, the U.S. president, frequently affable, occasionally bored, held forth for a collective 2 hours, fielding questions on topics ranging from the impeachment investigation he left at home to the British election campaign he flew into here. A video posted by Ian Bremmer is making the social media rounds, in which Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, and Justin Trudeau are caught on camera mocking Donald Trump at a Buckingham Palace reception. At a joint press spray Wednesday morning with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Trump was asked if he had any response to the video. He replied by canceling his planned press conference on the schedule for Wednesday afternoon. Oh, and he called Trudeau a name.
Did you have a video of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany's too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, you know, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%.
and I guess he's not very happy about it.
Trump heads back to D.C. Wednesday afternoon. That means he's not joining the 25,000 people from 200 countries in Madrid this week for the COP25 climate change conference, where over the next 2 weeks, global leaders will try to come up with a practical plan for cutting emissions to stem the threat of global warming. But never fear, Trump says climate change is very important to him. At one of his ridiculous press events at the NATO summit, the Washington Post's Philip Rucker asked whether he was thinking about climate change, and this was his actual answer.
Honestly, climate change is very important to me, and I've done many environmental impact statements over my life, and I believe very strongly in very, very crystal clear, clean water and clean air. That's a big part of climate change. I also see what's happening with our oceans, where certain countries are dumping unlimited loads of things in, and they tend to float toward the United States. I see that happening, and nobody's ever seen anything like it, and it's gotten worse. But no, it's very important to me also, but I want clean air and clean water. That would be number one and number two.
A federal appeals court in New York ruled Tuesday that Deutsche Bank must give documents on Trump's finances to 2 House committees. The decision marked the latest in a string of court defeats for Trump in cases involving his tax returns and other financial documents. Trump's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, called the congressional subpoenas issued to Deutsche Bank and Capital One invalid and said, quote, "We are evaluating our next options, including seeking review at the Supreme Court of the United States." Trump now has 7 days to ask the Supreme Court to put a hold on the ruling before the banks have to respond. Kamala Harris is out. The California senator officially ended her 2020 presidential campaign Tuesday, citing a lack of financial resources and stagnant poll numbers. With Harris out, only 6 Democrats have qualified for a spot on December's debate stage, and they're all white. Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and Tom Steyer will debate on December 12th. And finally, their cruelty knows no bounds. The Trump administration is expected to announce a plan Wednesday to end food stamp benefits for about 750,000 Americans, issuing a new regulation that makes it harder for states to gain waivers from a requirement that beneficiaries work or participate in a vocational training program.
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, so I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently, it's 34 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to be much cooler than yesterday. We're going to only top out of a high around 44, and we were about 48 to 50 degrees yesterday, though it felt much cooler. Areas of dense morning fog, sunshine, and mixed clouds later. Winds will be light and variable, though they will pick up out of the east-southeast tonight at 5 to 10 miles per hour, when we will be partly cloudy overnight and continuing to be partly cloudy tomorrow, with maybe the temperatures rising a degree or two, maybe 46 to 48, so that'd be like 4 degrees. We'll see. Winds will then shift out of due east at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And rain, quite a bit of rain is in the forecast about Friday, so just a couple of days. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.93 inches. Visibility is down to 5 miles, and relative humidity is at 96%. Well, Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 46 and sunny. Paris is 42 and sunny. Rome is 53 and sunny. Kyiv is 32 and fair. Kabul is 40 degrees, continuing to have smoke. As if that's a meteorological phenomena. Hong Kong is 62 and fair. Tokyo is 48 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 64 and clear. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 37 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Matthew Green of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A surprise drop in coal use in the U.S. and Europe has helped to slow the growth of global carbon dioxide emissions this year, with softening demand in China and India also contributing, according to a study published today. The report, launched at a UN climate summit in Madrid, showed that growing appetite for oil and gas meant the world was still far from achieving the drastic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions needed to avert catastrophic global warming. Nevertheless, coal use fell sharply in the U.S. and Europe, helping slow projected growth in carbon dioxide emissions to 0.6% compared with 2.1% last year. Slower growth in demand in China, which burns half of the world's coal, and India, combined with overall weaker economic growth, also helped slow the upward march of emissions.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Whenever a story has to do with Russia, it's always safe to be an anonymous worker bee at Reuters as they bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russia has accused Washington of deliberately delaying the issuing of visas for Russian officials, something it said could further damage an already strained relationship. Really? You installed Donnie, he's not working good enough for you? The U.S. Embassy in Moscow failed to issue visas to a Russian delegation of Treasury officials who were due to attend an International Audit Management Conference in Washington on the 3rd of December. Oh, was that when we were going to transfer our funds to you? Look, you got a direct link in Trump Tower with Alpha Bank. Use that. All right, go ahead and read the rest of the article. It's, they're mad. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we'll be here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.